Welcome to day one of the 28-day animation challenge. I hope you're excited. If you haven't seen how this challenge is going to work, I recommend checking out the day zero video, the intro to this challenge, where we describe how it's all going to go. But today we're going to be animating a vertical ball bounce, and along the way, we're going to be learning the software while we animate. So that'll be the fun thing, is you'll be learning how to set keyframes and move around in whatever animation tool set you decided to use. So that way, if it's new to you, you can kind of get warmed up to it quickly, and you'll also get warmed up to your animation skills at the same time. Now, I'm well aware that this may be a very easy exercise for you if you've been animating for a while. If that's the case, and you're much more serious about growing your skills quicker, I recommend you unlock Pro Mode. Pro Mode is exclusive to animators who have decided to unlock it via email. And we really up the ante with the challenges and take things even further if you know that you want to go pro. So if you're interested in that, you can do that for free by going to unlockpromode.com. And this 28-day animation challenge is starting easier in the beginning, but by no means is it going to stay easy the whole way through, because we're taking 2 to 4 years of animation knowledge at college and we're compressing it down to 28 days. And in a lot of cases, I think exceeding what you would learn in college. So stick around. It's going to be a really interesting ride the whole way through. All right, here we are inside of Maya. Obviously, this is what I'm going to be using, so I'll be animating in 3D. You're free, again, to use whatever you want. Of course, the process and the tools that you're going to use is going to differ a little bit, but just for the sake of brevity, because it's difficult for me to cover every tool that everybody could be using in any software, I'm only going to be talking about how Maya works, and you can adapt from there. The art side of things, the animation side of things, essentially is the same, right? You may be drawing, I may be moving a character rig puppet, but we're still using animation principles. We're still playing around with how many frames there's going to be for a movement, how that movement looks, et cetera, et cetera. When you open a new software for animation, as may be the case for you right now, it's very common to feel overwhelmed just by looking at everything. Maya itself has a lot of tools, a lot of buttons to click, menus to dive into, and you have no idea what it is. No idea what all of these are, rather. But I would say there are only really 3 things you need to figure out off the bat with an animation software. You need to figure out how to move and select the tools you need. That's the first thing. Second thing would be to figure out how to set a keyframe. So how do you go and put save a drawing or save a move on a particular frame? So how do you go to say frame 1 and say, okay, I want the character to be in this pose, and save that. And then the third thing would be set up your settings so that you are animating at the right speed, like a film speed or a game speed of things. So let's actually just start there real quick with some very basic settings. Here in Maya, down here at the gear icon, I pull up my preferences and I can get to my settings. So on time slider, there's frame rate, 24 FPS, so 24 frames for a second. My playback speed is the same, 24 frames for a second. If you do play every frame, the speed is completely different. If you change the frame rate and bump it up to 30 or less, the sense of speed is going to be completely different because we're getting extra frames. So that's what you're going to set it to. There are other settings here which we'll dive into later, like tangents. How does the software create in-betweens for you? How does it automatically move the character around? Or whatever, like in 2D software would be, how does it generate drawings for you? But we'll get to that later. So that's settings. Boom. First thing taken care of. Next thing, moving around here. So in Maya, if you alt and left click in perspective here, this camera view, we can start moving around in a 3D manner where we can see high, low, sides, whatever. And this is called orbiting here, this alt and left click. There's also a Alt and middle mouse to pan around. So I'm just going left to right, top to bottom, but I'm not actually like going around in 3D spaces, keeping me in like a 2D move, right? If I have Alt and right click, I can track in and out. Okay. So with the combination of these, I can move around this space and kind of get where I need to be to see everything. Okay, so that's navigation. Again, I'm going through all of this pretty quick because this is a 28-day animation challenge, so you can take your time, revisit this stuff. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this very basic exercise in the beginning, so that you can get used to the new software, if it is new to you, and then we can also kind of warm up your animation skills at the same time. So kind of navigating around this space. Over here is my main toolbar. So I got my select tool, I've got my move tool, rotate tool, and scale tool. These are pretty much all we need to start animating. So this will select our character, this will move our character, this will rotate our character using the controllers. And there are hotkeys for those. So there's Q, W, E. So Q, select, W for move, E for rotate. But let me show you exactly what I mean. Provided you've gone into the description and grabbed the rig that I'm using for Maya, you can just drag and drop the file for the ball rig right in here, and boom, there it is. Okay, so you can see that there is a ball here and there's a lot of curves around the outside. These curves are our puppet controls. So this is how we actually go in and select different parts of this. So I can come in here and select this top circle thing, and you can see it makes the ball kind of squishy. Control Z, just like any other program, to zero that out. Then I have this one, which is more like one of the main movers there, right? This like rotates everything. So I'm just hitting Q to go and select, W to move it around, and these arrows are the 3 axes inside of Maya. So we've got Z to go this direction, X to go that direction, and Y to go up and down, right? So we use a combination of these to move something around in 3D space. And then here you've got, with E, the E on your keyboard quick selects the rotate tool. So I can rotate in the same axes. So it's Z to tilt it, X to bend it, Y to twist, right? That's essentially moving and selecting stuff and bringing the character in here. Down here on the bottom is our time slider in Maya. So this is telling us how many frames we have to work with. So we start at frame 1, and if we go to 24, that's 1 second, you know. So we've got a lot of frames to work with here. I'm gonna go ahead and bump this down to say, actually, let's just make it 25. So since we're starting on frame 1, a full second will be 25. So I'm just changing how many frames we got there to work with. It shortens up our view, makes it very easy for us to see what's happening. And to set a keyframe, so say we want to save this position here where the ball is, I would select the controller that I want to, you know, move around, and I would hit just on frame 1 here, beginning, S. And over here you see it makes everything in red. And there's down here there's a red key tick. Means that there is a keyframe on the time slider. Okay, so it means that that position's saved. If I move ahead, move it again over here, hit S, I can then pop back here and see that this is saved, right? Now Maya's automatically, because we set this keyframe of the ball out here, Maya's automatically saying, okay, you have the ball here, then you have it over here. So you want to move from here to there. And then it automatically gives us movement, right? It kind of fills in those drawings or those frames for us. This is in-betweening. So this is Miles' way of trying to fill in the gap of the movement for you to kind of assist what you're creating. That is saving keyframes. So just like that, we've covered the 3 most basic things to use that we need for animation software to start animating, start getting comfortable, and you can see how much stuff we've skipped, right? There's tons of menus that we haven't even gone into, tons of tools. So that's that. What we're going to be animating today is a vertical ball bounce. So this is a very simple animation, again, to get us used to the software and to also warm up our animation skills. It's going to teach us a lot of key things, though. It's going to teach us how we create a sense of weight, a sense of gravity for objects and even people. It's the same approach. You're going to get, introduced to several principles of animation along the way. So timing and spacing, it's a huge part of that. We can't really have an animation without timing and spacing because look right here, we're setting keyframes on units of time. So we're working with time already. And spacing is just like how far this moves every single frame. So what is the distance that this ball moves every single frame? So that's timing and spacing. And we're going to be working with squash and stretch as well. And overlap. So we'll just kind of get started with those things and we're just gonna have fun. And the idea here is this is a vertical ball bounce. So this ball we're gonna have it start in the air and then it's just gonna essentially bounce continuously on a loop is what we're going for. And essentially it won't run out of energy is what we're pretending here. So let's simplify things. Camera view wise, we got this fancy 3D space camera. I'm gonna go to panels, orthographic, front view, just to look at the front. Now this keeps everything 2D. I can't see 3D. Just makes it very easy to look at what's happening. Okay. Now here, I'm going to pretend that where this is the ground and the ball doesn't move past that. So on frame 1, I'm gonna start with the ball in the air. Okay, and then it's gonna fall. I don't want this anymore. That was just an example. So I'm gonna hit right click, delete. Actually, rather than doing that, I'm going to grab this red arrow here to move it. It's because it's still technically on the ground and move it back where it was. Okay. You can also just go here and make that 0. And then it's exactly in the center where it was before I put it up high up here. Okay. I do want to change the fact that it's on frame 7 though. I'm going to have it take half a second to reach the ground. So right now we get the ball going from the highest point down to the ground. And then we want this to loop. So I want frame 25 to do the exact same thing. So I could come here and I could hit S and then move this up. But it's actually a lot faster to be very exact. If I go over frame 1, middle mouse, I hold my middle mouse down, and then I drag it from there to 25, and I hit S. Now it is exactly the same. As I flip between the two, you can't see a difference in that ball moving. By the way, I have a hotkey for flipping between these keyframes here on the time slider. I've made mine 1 and 2 because I have a little keypad that makes it very handy to hit those buttons. I think the default in Maya is comma and period though. You don't have to set that up, but just makes your life easier. So, as you get used to this, maybe you want to dive into that later. So right now we just got this ball up in the air, drops down to the ground, and it comes back up. So it's going to perpetually bounce. Boing, boing, boing. And as I hit play here, of course you can hit this play button there. You can also set up a hotkey just to hit play. But as I hit play here, we can see the ball looks a little weird, right? Does this look like a normal basketball bounce or a tennis ball bouncing off the ground? No. It doesn't have a sense of weight. It almost feels like it's in space or it's on the moon, the way that it's, it just doesn't seem like it has any acceleration to it whatsoever. It's just kind of drifty. So this is where our principles of animation come in, right? If we want to give something weight, then what we want to do is, as say the ball is falling right now, it's going at the same speed the whole way down. You know, from frame to frame to frame, it's going an equal amount all the way to the ground. And what Maya's doing actually on frame 1 and frame 12 is it's kind of easing to a stop here, like easing to a stop here, and it's easing out. This is a principle of animation. It's easing out into an acceleration, and then it's easing in to a stop. So it's kind of like gently putting on the brakes, and then it's gently accelerating to reach the top. Okay? We want to change that to get a sense of weight. We want to really favor the high point to have this ball feel like it's you know, lingering in the air. I should move this to frame 13, by the way, just to count my frame 1 keyframe. And you move this in Maya by shift left clicking, and then you move it over 1. So what I'm going to do is go to, say, a halfway position between 1 and 13. And I'm going to push this up towards the top. That means it's going to linger up here towards the top a much longer period of time. And then it's going to shoot down towards the ground a bit faster. Okay. So I'm going to shoot on the other side, go halfway between, and then push this towards the top as well. So you can see the movement through these frames is much less compared to here. Right, it's kind of quickly shooting up there. Boing, boing. Now we're getting a sense of hang time. And maybe I even pushed that too much, so I'm going to down a little. Boing, boing. We still feel that floatiness though, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go a frame. Let's say we go here to frame 12. Yeah, let's do this. So 12 is going to be on the ground. Okay, so that this is in the same spot. So we're going to set this frame 12 right next to 13 here, right where it's on the ground. I want to make it exactly the same. So I'm going to middle mouse drag over and key that. Okay, so the ball's not moving here. Okay. And then on 14, the frame right after it's on the ground, I'm going to shoot this up in the air quicker. Okay, so this side of the bounce is feeling, if we just play that, it's feeling a lot more like a tennis ball or a basketball. Right? There's some gravity there. Here, it's still kind of slowing into the ground. We're trying to avoid that. So I'm going to push this up. I'm going to set another keyframe on frame 10 and push this up. Okay. Boom. Now it's feeling pretty good overall, right? We got a sense of boing, boing on the ball. We're still getting a little bit of sticking here though, because there's 2 frames where it's just kind of like in place. And there's a reason for that. So we just use timing and spacing here. We're just setting keyframes on a controller. We're keying frames at certain time, at a certain amount of time, so that the ball, you know, the ball starts to drop out of the air here. And we're using spacing where we're pushing this towards the top and pushing it towards the bottom. We're favoring one of those keyframes to make parts slower and other parts faster. So so this part is slower, this part is faster, right? Here we're going to introduce another principle. So I'm going to grab this controller. which you might remember had that kind of elasticity where it made the ball very squishy. And I'm gonna just key a frame on 12, 13, 14. So we haven't set keyframes on this. 1, 25. I'll put it on 10 as well. And what I'm gonna do here on frame 12, remember it's on the ground for 2 frames here. On frame 12, I'm going to pull it up. This is stretching it. So we're elongating the shape. This is the squash. So we get squash, stretch. And then on 14, I'm going to stretch the ball again. Now, why am I doing this? Well, in real life, there are a lot of objects that are very, very flexible. And their shape changes quite a bit, especially when they interact with the real world around them, or in the case of a ball, it strikes the ground. If you look at a tennis ball or a basketball in slow motion, you will see them actually stretch a bit and squash because the solid material they're made out of isn't so solid that it doesn't flex at all. And the same thing applies to people or creatures. We change shape all the time. If I'm breathing here, there is a rise in my chest, there is a relaxing in my chest, so there's a squash and stretch in my body, in my spine, in my chest, in the muscle mass and the fat and everything. So this principle of squash and stretch, like having a character or drawing a character that changes shape over time, brings a lot of life to things. In this case of the ball, if I hit play now we can really feel that ball hit the ground, right? We can really feel it like interact and almost ricochet off the ground. It adds a lot of physicality to the ball, right? It might be too much. We can come in here, we can play around with these amounts to find the perfect amount. And maybe instead of pulling here on this one, maybe we pull down from the bottom. And then this one, we just zero that guy out. So this kind of gives us a sense of acceleration here with the ball stretching, right? That's why, when the ball takes off at speed, it pulls the mass. There's a part of the ball that kind of goes first and there's a bit that drags behind. That's why it stretches here. And this squashes because it impacts the ground. It's much more solid than the ball is. So the ball kind of folds around it and changes shape, right? That's why we're doing that. Now, you can see on the back half of this bounce here, it's just maintaining that stretch. And it looks a little weird because we just see that stretch for a long period of time. We don't really see, a basketball or a tennis ball elongated, stretched like rubber for a long period of time. We just kind of feel it flex a little as we look at it very carefully at speed. So that's all we want to do here. We just want to feel that squash and stretch. So I'm gonna go here and just give it a few frames to be in that stretch. And over these frames, it's going from that stretch back to normal. Okay. Boing. So it kind of gives us a bit of that springiness in there. You can set another keyframe on that there. Okay. And that's what I did here by stamping these keys in the beginning on this one. These are all at 0 on frame 1 and frame 10. This is at 0. It doesn't have any stretch. And then it kicks in there. Now maybe I want it to kick in a little sooner. Maybe I want there to be, the ball isn't going too fast through here, so we don't have to have a lot of stretch there. Maybe we put Pioneers. And then as it really starts to drop here, because it's covering a lot more ground more quickly, right? If we just kind of look at how far that's going, it's going a lot farther. Maybe here we put more on there. And then it's got even more, but by the time it contacts the ground here. That's what we did on frame 12. We made a contact frame. So we said that this is the ball touching the ground for the first time and it's stretching. That will become more important later when we're talking about characters with legs and things. Having a contact frame, having that stretch frame, it's kind of setting up our overlap in the body, which we'll talk about more later. So now that we're hitting this, watching this in motion, hitting play, it feels pretty good. It feels like this ball is obeying gravity. We made this pretty quickly, as we're kind of explaining it along the way as we go to. This is looking pretty alive. You can really play around with the squash and stretch to maybe make it less jello-y. Maybe you can add a little bit more during the portions of hang time where it's towards the top. That's for us to play around with as artists. There's definitely a point where we can underdo the amount of squash and stretch and overdo. So, if we were to, for instance, here, just like super squash it, the shape gets really big for a one frame change. It almost becomes too much. You lose the sense of elasticity and the fact that this is a basketball or a tennis ball. And really that's coming down to volume. In real life, you don't want to, in real life, a ball wouldn't squash, it wouldn't widen out farther than it is tall, right? So if you're widening it out, it also is getting shorter. If you're stretching it out, it's getting less wide, it's getting thinner, right? But it's still taking up essentially the same volume. That's what you want to aim for. Hope that makes sense. You don't have to grasp it all right now if this is all overwhelming. You just need to put it in here and experiment, see that squash and stretch is something that can bring extra life to your animation. What else can we do? What's left here? Without getting too carried away with this. I would say here, we can go in and add some rotation to the ball, right? We have no sense of the ball rotating, it's just kind of moving up and down. We don't feel the ball is rolling in any particular direction or anything like that. And when from throwing a tennis ball or a basketball, they spin, right? They have a roll to them. So we can add some of that here. We can really control it. And let's see, is this controller? Nah, it's probably better for me to use this controller. Every rig puppet is a little bit different. Well, what I'm going to do is, actually from this view, let's just use the rotate Z. So this is kind of tilting the ball side to side. Okay. So as the ball comes down here to 13, I'm just going to go ahead and key 1, 13, and 25. As this ball comes down here, I'm going to give it a little something there. Just give it a little rotation. I'm just making stuff up, right? And then it's going to contact the ground. Maybe it contacts the ground at a little bit of an angle, and then it pops back up. And maybe around here, it goes back the other way. So what do we get if we do that? Boom. Okay, so you can see how that creates a little bit of a wobble in this. Now, I'd want to play around with this to make this feel better, obviously. I think, actually, I'd prefer to drag this through here. Boom. A little bit longer. And then here, maybe I start coming up. And I can copy that over to frame 1. And then here on frame 6, maybe I push that even more. Now there's a little bit of a stick right here where things kind of stop. Things kind of slow down into that. And I would, as this starts to drop, I don't want it to move so much like that. Wanted to give it a little bit of time. And then here, as it really starts to pick up speed, I think I'm gonna push this later to frame 9. Boing. Now we don't really have as much of a stop there, right? It feels like it flows and rotates and doesn't, you know, it accelerates at the right moment, and it doesn't feel like that spin ever comes to a complete frozen stop. Not in the beginning anyway. We got a little bit here at the end, and that has a lot to do with these frames almost having no motion. And it also has to do with the fact that we're seeing frame 25 and frame 1 be exactly the same. So it starts to feel a little better if we hide that frame. So we just see 24 when it loops. And we can add some extra definition in here like we did for the first part of the bounce, where we kind of rotate it, drag it down. We're dragging back where we came from. And then as we come up, maybe this comes up a little bit quicker. Bit better, right? So you can see how we can just keep adding into these things, adding in these things to give this a bit of life. And we're only having a ball bounce perpetually up and down. We're not, you know, having it go anywhere in particular, like left to right, or come towards camera or away from camera or any of that. It starts to get really fun when we can have that, because then we can add the rolling on top of the spins that happen and the twisting. Of course, you can go from here and you could say, does it make more sense if we look in perspective view, or we see side view? Actually, let me go in perspective so you're not confused by this. Yeah, so the ball, that arrow is helping us know which way the ball is facing. So that's kind of where we animated from. We were animating from this angle. And the ball here, you know, we can kind of bend it the other way. So as it drops and hits the ground here, maybe in this moment we're gonna have it bent back quite a bit using rotate X. And then as it hits the ground, let me hide all this so I can show you. You can hide things by going to show and then click that NURBS curves checkbox, and then that disappears. Boing. So as it's coming down, I'm bending this back to kind of drag the rotation of the ball. And then as it's landing, I'm pulling that forwards. And then as it's lifting in the air, I'm dragging it back again, okay? And I don't have any keyframes on 25 or frame 1 for this. And I want that to, for now, we can just put it at 0. We'll move this over to frame 1. And key that, okay? So it starts to give us even more to our ball bounce. We can keep adding keyframes to define it further, like we did the rotate Z, where we're kind of tilting it to one side or the other. And then from this angle, we're adding a little bit of bend forward and back on the rotate X. So the rotate X, you know, we can push this stuff to have a little bit more going on, right? You can kind of shoot it up towards the high point a little bit sooner. Maybe it starts to bend back a little bit there. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but you can keep adding that definition to add more and more life to whatever character or object you're animating, right? That's the whole point of this. And we're gonna go ahead and wrap that first lesson there. Provided this is your first time going into this animation software, you dove in, you started learning how to move around the space, what tools you really need to move a rig around, or what tools you need to draw. You've learned how to put keyframes down and save, the movement that you want to create, change the preferences, and then animation-wise, you've dived into the principles of animation: timing, spacing, squash, stretch, overlap, ease in, ease out. You've started to kind of grasp what they're about in practice of actually animating this rhythmball bounce by giving it weight, by giving it shape change, by having certain rotations drag as it bounces up and down. Feel free to keep playing around with this animation and take it as far as you want. The more that you do so, the more you'll get used to the software that you're using, as well as these animation principles, which may or may not be new for you. If you're ready to take it to another level already, feel free to unlock Pro Mode. You'll get higher challenges that really push everything you've learned about the ball, and you can try it in a whole bunch of different ways to really push yourself. You can do this for free by going to unlockpromode.com. Either way, if you did enjoy today's challenge, please like or comment on this video. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it all. And share this with your friends if you want them to join you on this challenge adventure, so you can grow together, or any other animators that you know, so you can animate together, you can give each other feedback. It helps you grow even faster. That said, until day 2, happy animating.